Good to go. Are we recording here? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our January 21st council meeting. Our first order of business is a call to order and arise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our next business on the agenda is the reading of the Sunshine Statement and roll call by our municipal clerk, Mrs. Lauren Stats.
This meeting of the Dunellen Borough Council is called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of January 21st, 2025 was included in a list of meetings that was advertised in the Courier on January 9th, 2025, and as a teleconference was noticed on the official Dunellen website on January 16th, 2025, and on the public bulletin board on North Avenue on January 16th, 2025, and has remained continuously posted as the required notice. Mayor Salento,
Present.
Council President Sigmund,
Here.
Mrs. Albertson,
Present.
Mrs. Lance,
Here.
Mrs. Rios,
Here.
Mr. Scott,
Here.
and Mr. Vandermark.
Here.
Before we go on to item number 3, I'm going to just ask that we have a moment of silence in remembrance of George W. Hodgelik, who passed away on Sunday, January 12th. George was a lifelong Dunellen resident, a lifetime member of the Dunellen Fire Department, where he served honorably for 63 years. He was a World War II and a Korean War veteran, and a friend to so many here in our Miracle Mile. Personally, for me, growing up on Walnut Street, I was privileged to know him and his family for my entire life. He was truly like another grandfather to all of us, not just on the 700 block of Walnut, but a lot of us throughout the town. And he will always hold a special place in mine and many members of our community's hearts. His legacy will live on here in Dunellen through the George W. Hodgelik Firehouse, which has been named in his honor, and through his large and loving family. George is going to be dearly missed. So if we can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is presentations. We have a presentation tonight regarding the 4th Affordable Housing Round Declaration of Obligation presented by Francis Reiner from DMR Architects. Following the presentation, there is a resolution number 53 on the agenda establishing the borough's 4th round present and prospective affordable housing obligations. So before we do that, we'll go into a presentation by DMR Architects.
Mayor, thank you. And members of the council, thank you for having me. Fran Reiner with DMR. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me and they can see my screen.
We can hear you inside the chamber.
Great. So this evening, I'm going to give a overview, a brief presentation of why you have a resolution in front of you this evening regarding the 4th round affordable housing requirements. Can you see the second screen that starts with history of affordable housing?
Yes.
Great. So as everybody knows, New Jersey Supreme Court in 1975 passed a seminal case in which it required, through constitutional obligation for municipalities, to create opportunities for affordable housing. In 1985, they created the Council for Affordable Housing. And the Council for Affordable Housing then made rules as to why and how each municipality in the state of New Jersey had to provide affordable housing. There have been a number of prior rounds where, as we indicated in the 4th round, the 3rd round, which really after almost 14 years of inability and failed rule adoptions from 2000, 2014. The third round was adopted in 2015, which identified the number of residential affordable housing units that would have to be developed in each municipality within the state from 2015 to 2025. As I indicated, we're now in round 4, which is to say the number of affordable housing units will be from 2025 to 2035. That would be kind of where we are in terms of the next step. On March 20th of 2024, the state, through its legislation, passed a law requiring the 4th round affordable housing, and it identified the rules that would have to be followed. Council for Affordable Housing was kind of put to the side, and the Department of Community Affairs is now the entity that is managing the 4th round affordable housing. It requires that each municipality adopt a resolution before January 1st of 2025, indicating that they either agree or provide new numbers for their municipality from what the DCA put out in March. So tonight, the only thing that is really on the docket for the mayor and council to consider is the resolution identifying the number of present need number of units and the prospective need, which I'll get into in a second. The rules do talk about beyond the 31st of January. There is a requirement to adopt a plan, which is a housing and spending plan by June 30th of 2025. And then to adopt ordinances by March 15th of 2026. But again, this evening is really about just the acceptance of the DCA numbers that were put out in October of this year. So the DCA calculations for the Borough of Dunellen indicate that the prospective need, and the prospective need represents new housing, the Dunellen is required to generate 23 affordable housing units by the year 2035. In addition, DCA put out a number for what they call their present need. Present need represents the number of units that have to be funded for rehab and or repair of existing residential buildings that are already within the Borough of Dunellen. So again, the prospective need, new housing, would be 23 units, and the present need, which is rehab, would be 79 units. And again, the objective of this evening, which you have a resolution in front of you, is to adopt those numbers before January 31st. Now, the other option would be that if you want to propose alternative numbers, that you would have to follow the statutory methodology that was passed in March of 2024. You'd have to identify flaws in the data that generated the number of 23 and 79. And then, of course, there's risks to challenges if you put out a different number. It's our recommendation, as it is with all of our clients that we're working on from affordable housing standpoint, to accept those numbers, but understand that there are certain whereas clauses that allow us to reduce those numbers from January 31st through the adoption of the plan, which is scheduled for June 30th of 2025. What this does is by passing a resolution, you provide yourself with temporary immunity from builder's remedy suits and from litigation. I'm hoping that we're now on the prospective need slide. So again, the prospective need represents new zoning. It means that it requires the opportunity to provide those units 23 through zoning and or rezoning, to show construction of those units by 2035. The way that it's generally calculated is it's done by region. So they broke the state into different regions. Each region was provided a certain number of units, and then each municipality within that region was then subdivided into its own number of units. And that was based on the NR value, income, and available land. And for Dunellen, it was 23 units for those new affordable housing units. As I mentioned, there are a number of provisions in the in the resolution this evening that you have in front of you that allows us to reduce that number between the January 31st and June 30th timeframe. And among them is a vacant land adjustment. Vacant land adjustment allows for municipalities to see what are the actual available capacity of vacant land within the municipality, and to determine based on what is available, whether or not that 23 units is realistic or whether or not that number should be lowered. And so what we're looking at is a prospective need of what we believe could be as low as 6 units, but no greater than 23 units. And so the 6 units represents 25% of the prospective need, and that is the minimum number of units that you would have to put into place in terms of your plan by June 30th. The present need, which is the rehab number, is required to be able to provide a funding mechanism and a program within the borough that would allow for anybody that comes through an application to be able to help fund some of that rehab costs as a part of that 79 unit number. In addition, we can again reduce that, and there are whereas clauses in the resolution this evening that allow that to be reduced between the January 31st and the June 30th timeframe to adjust the present need based on a reflection of the actual conditions of the borough. And so as a part of the 4th round spending plan, which DMR will be working on for the June 30th, we'll determine whether or not the 79 units is realistic or whether or not that number should be reduced as a part of the housing and spending plan that will ultimately be adopted in June. There are a number of ways to create affordable housing units. Among them are to have set-asides within development projects and within the zoning. And so the borough has set-asides of 15% requirement for rent projects and 20% set aside for sale projects. So project comes in and it's for rent, 15% of the total number of units has to be affordable. For sale, 20% has to be affordable. In addition, there are group home opportunities or supportive housing. So there's a lot of different ways to generate affordable housing over the course of the next 10 years. And in addition, you can actually get bonus credits of up to 25% of your prospective need. Can be done through credits, and there's different mechanisms of what those credits are in terms of whether or not they're near public transportation, if they are within redevelopment plans. So as a part of, again, the 4th round housing plan that we'll be working on through June 30th, we'll be able to determine if there are bonus credits that can be given by through the course of that report. The next steps, again, this evening is to declare the affordable housing obligation through the resolution. It's our recommendation to accept the DCA number of 23 and 79, but acknowledge that there are adjustment opportunities within the resolution that you have in front of you. After this evening, from February to May, there are timeframes set where developers and or property owners can challenge the number. It's one of the reasons why we recommend that we take the DCA number, because if it's challenged, DCA will have to fight that challenge. Whereas if you make your own number, then it may be incumbent on to the borough to actually fight that challenge. Those challenges have to be resolved by March 31st, 2025. And at that point, you can be negotiating with developers and drafting zoning. And again, you would prepare a 4th round housing and spending plan, which would ultimately be adopted by June 30th. And then ordinances would be drafted after that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, without hearing any questions from council, we have a motion and second on the resolution. Move it, Sigmund.
Second, Rios.
Sigmund. Rios.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Land?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
And thank you to Fran and his team, as well as the Housing Review Committee that was put together to review the recommendations before it came to council. Council President Sigmund and Councilmember Albertson were part of that, so thank you for your work on that, as well as to Business Administrator Alex Miller, so thank you. Okay, and well, Community Development Director Derek White. Next up is item number 4 on the agenda, Mayor's appointment to boards, commissions, and authorities. We have 2 this evening. One is an appointment to the Mayor's Cannabis Task Force, with the expiration ending this year because it's an annual term. And then number 2 is appointment of new board members to the Dunellen Public Library Board of Trustees, but also resetting some of the term expiration dates for the current membership because there were some imbalances that we discovered. And so we worked with the Library Board of Trustees to correct those and putting it on our agenda as a matter of record between both agencies. So this is about correcting the imbalances of expiration dates that were there. But we thank everybody for stepping up to the plate and volunteering, and we hope more people join us at the table. Okay, item number 5 is recognizing Arbor Day 2025 through a proclamation. Who is the liaison to the Shade Tree Commission? Is it you? Oh, sorry, I changed it this year. Council President, would you like to read in your very regal voice the proclamation?
How can I say no to that? All right. Get it right here. So, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide a habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our borough increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, Jason F. Salento, Mayor of the Borough of Dunellen, does hereby proclaim Friday, April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day. In the Borough of Dunellen, New Jersey, I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Well, thank you for the reading of that proclamation. 3.5 months early, so we appreciate it. Thank you. It was requested that we get it done early, so it's all well and prepared for Arbor Day. Next on the agenda is the approval meeting of our meeting minutes. First up is the reorganization meeting of January 1st, 2025. Can I have a motion and second, please?
Move it, Sigmund.
Second, Albertson.
Any edits or comments to the meeting minutes as they currently stand? Without hearing any, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance,
Yes.
Mrs. Rios,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund,
Yes.
and Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Okay, second meeting of approval minutes is from our special meeting, January 9th, 2025. Can I have a motion and second?
Move it, Rios.
Second, Patterson.
Any comments or edits to the meeting minutes as they currently stand? Without hearing any, we'll take a roll call.
Mrs. Albertson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lance,
Yes.
Mrs. Rios,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund,
Yes.
Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Item number 7 on the agenda is the introduction of ordinances. We have 3 this evening. First up is 2025-1. Can I have a motion on it? It's an ordinance to amend ordinance 2024-32, repealing and replacing chapter 202 parking meters of the Borough Code in its entirety.
Move it, Sigmund.
Second, Rios.
With this one, it's the same exact ordinance. We're just replacing it with chapter 202 instead of 270. So everything else is the same.
There's a clerical.
There's
error.
there, yeah. Mrs. Albertson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lance,
Yes.
Mrs. Rios,
Yes.
Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund,
Yes.
and Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Sorry. Can I have a motion and second on 2025-02, an ordinance to amend and supplement the general legislation of the Borough of Dunellen, chapter 202?
Move it, Sigmund.
Second Rios.
Similar circumstances?
Yes, so this was the one that was introduced at the December 16th meeting for the handicap parking spot. That was using the same chapter code as the previous one, 270, so we're just amending both at the same time. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion and second on 2025-03, a bond ordinance amending sections 3G description of the project of bond ordinance number 2024-21?
Move it, Sigmund.
Second Albertson.
And this is the amending of that section where it speaks about the RFPBs for the Madison Ave and Washington Ave to include the
Flashing beacon.
South Washington Avenue and Orange and Grove and New
New
Market.
Yep.
So this way we can begin the engineering and bidding of those projects so they can coincide with one another. So,
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lamb?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
okay. Item number 8 on the agenda is resolutions. If Mrs. Stats could read them out and then give us a moment to discuss if there's needed discussion.
Resolution number 54 is to pay the bills.
Move it Albertson.
Second, Sigmund.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 55 is to hire Dana Downing as yoga instructor for the winter season for the Dunellen Recreation Department.
Move it, Sigmund.
Second Rios.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 56 is to hire spring tennis coaches staff for the Recreation Department.
Move it, Sigmund.
Second Albertson.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 57 is authorizing the memorandum of understanding for use of specialized equipment for the 2025 calendar year.
Move it Rios.
Second, Sigmund.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 58 is to hire winter flag football coaching staff for the Recreation Department.
Move it Rios.
Second, Sigmund.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Okay. Resolution number 59 is to accept the resignation of Ronald Picone as senior bus driver.
Move it Albertson.
Second, Sigmund.
I would just like to make a comment about Mr. McCone. He's a great guy. He's worked with us for many years. He provides great care and service to our senior and disabled community. And as a bus driver, always making sure he's on time and delivering wherever they got to go. And so we thank him for his service. We'll miss his energy behind the wheel and in the office. So We wish him well in his retirement and God bless him. So thank you for your service, Ron. Want to say, anything, Mr. Miller?
There, yeah, no, great job, great guy, really helpful to our seniors, I can't say enough nice things about him.
Yeah.
Even to taking them up in the holiday party, which is not supposed to be working.
Yeah.
But one weekend, driving them, so, great man, and he'll do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever gets the job next has some pretty big shoes to fill,
Yeah.
just not lead feet to fill, so. Okay,
All right, I'll take a roll call. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 60 is to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Dunellen Board of Education for live streaming video access. Move it, Rios?
Second, Vanderbilt?
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Somebody want to speak?
so I thought you were gonna say something. The way you went for the microphone. I apologize, did not mean to delay the vote.
Okay. Any comments? No? Okay. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 61 is to issue a prior year revenue refund for a fee overpayment. Move it, Rios?
Second, Sigmund?
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 62 is to issue a prior year revenue refund for a postage fee.
Move it, Vanderbilt?
Second, Sigmund?
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 63 is to authorize a refund for a tax overpayment.
Move it, Sigmund?
Second, Albertson.
Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Resolution number 64 is accepting and adopting the Central Jersey Municipal Joint Insurance Funds 2025 Safety Incentive Program.
Move it,
Rio. Second, Rio. Vandermark. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Number 9, the agenda is consent agenda. So we have resolutions number 65 through number 80. So council, if there's any specific resolution you'd like to pull from the consent agenda, please let us know. And then we will save that up to at the end.
You pull 65, please.
Pull number 65.
Sure.
Okay.
So we'll have a motion and a second on the consent agenda, and then we'll go back to this one.
Yeah, so motion second on 66 through 80.
Second, Rios. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios? Yes. Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark.
Yes.
Can we have to have a motion second on 65, right?
Yep.
Motion second on 65.
Move it, Sigmund?
Second, Rios.
Oh, I just curious, we talked about it a while ago. About adopting some new nail salons and hair salons in town. Are we gonna look into that and more, because we keep on adopting, saying that's all these nail salons and hair salons, and that's what we're gonna end up with in our beautiful downtown.
So this one that's on here is not a new one that's coming into town. They didn't pay their fee on time, so they were not on the agenda for the 16th. So they finally paid their fee, but they've been on the list. They just paid late and that's why
So
they're
it's
on.
not a
It's not a new one. It's the one right next to
I
Borough
know
Hall.
there was another one that opened up around, it's come up that, but it's,
Yeah,
another new one has opened.
Right. yeah, this one, no, this one is on the previous
But is
list.
there any way to look into, I know that we said that we would do it last year, but can we work on that this year?
What specifically are you suggesting?
Not only is there, nail salons and that type of business, I mean, we're gonna, we're building all of this downtown retail space. And what are we gonna do? We're gonna accept nail salons and hair salons? How much can we bring in with that? I mean, I like to see restaurants.
Well, yes, I'd like
Yeah,
to
I
see
know that a lot.
restaurants too.
I know
So
that.
legal, this is really a legal question, so.
Do
It's
they limit?
something I'll look into. It's very difficult to do that because that treat all of the business, you have to treat all of the business as uniformly and equally. So it's very hard to pick and choose, but if there's anything that can be done, I'll look into that issue and then maybe we can discuss it. But I made a note. I'll see
You
if
say,
there's.
but, 15, 20 hair salons, you come up with that number again,
How big
per
is it?
square mile, per square mile, how many can we use? Without overfilling things.
Well, it's, I guess the market dictates that generally speaking. I mean, one could argue the same thing about restaurants. How many restaurants can you have in a town too? So, as Mr. Robertson said, he'll look into it. I think it's the infrastructure we put into place to attract certain types of businesses, such as a special improvement district. Or DDMO is the downtown management organization. So, I get your point. We did put into place what did we do with the licensing? Basically that once one of these parlors come in, it's, they're more higher quality versus just setting up shop and
It's a strict,
not meeting health obligations and quality of services.
yeah, it's strict ordinance.
It's a stricter ordinance, which Mrs. Stats oversees that ordinance, right, along with the code enforcement
In the health,
and health and how it's been playing out.
good, everything, except for this one person who didn't pay, but
Okay.
they paid. They've been inspected once a year and everyone has passed, no re-inspections.
I think
Can I ask a question? Is there anything, in zoning laws that requires a certain distance between hair salons?
No, there are occasionally you'll see between gas stations, there are the separation arrangements, but they're very difficult to regulate, so. I don't think there's anything that would specifically require a distance or separation, not in zoning law. You have to, there's equal protection requirements once you permit a certain use in a zone.
And that's our
Permitted
redevelopment plan. It
use.
permits the use.
Once it's permitted in that zone, you really can't regulate who is approved, who isn't approved, how many are approved. You can regulate by zone what type of businesses are there. But once it's an approved use, that you really very, very difficult to find a justification to limit the number for separations. But I'll look into it, but I think it will be difficult to do that.
This has been a question that's come up through various council members throughout the years since my time. And it's been a consistent legal opinion between different attorneys, between municipal attorney as well as land use attorneys and redevelopment attorneys, that they all have that same consensus. So, we'll look into it again and see what Mr. Robertson comes up with. But I think it comes down to making sure that we're creating an opportunity for more businesses to come into town, such as what we're doing through redevelopment, and maybe strengthening the downtown management organization to be able to really seek out. Now with the hiring of the director of community development, that's also a tool in the toolbox. So, and look, Councilmember Vandermark, we're not the only town that is experiencing this. I talked to all mayors across the state and they all say the same thing. A lot of other downtowns are being filled with hair salons and nail salons and barber shops. It's a common thread in all main streets. So,
Is there any more questions? Okay, I'll take a roll. Mrs. Albertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mrs. Rios?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Sigmund?
Yes.
And Mr. Vandermark?
Yes.
item number 10 on the agenda is council reports. Councilmember Albertson.
Okay, Fire Department. On Sunday, January 12th, sad news was received on the passing of life member George W. Hodgelick. We would like to thank everyone for the outpouring of support as we gave George the funeral service he deserved. We would like to recognize the support of Dunellen administration, mayor and council, Dunellen police, and OEM CERT during the services. Dunellen was covered by Middlesex, Borough, and the Greenbrook Fire Departments, while our units were out of service. During the funeral procession, Newmarket Fire and River Road Fire Departments, both from Piscataway, went above to ensure the American flag was properly presented to both the firehouse and the cemetery. 2024 statistics for the year. 7 false alarms, 124, hazmat, 52, service calls, 21, good intent, 56, natural disaster, 2. I have to get my page to come up. I've got my reading glasses today, folks. I'm doing this blind. EMS 18, fire 34, rupture explosion 1, for an annual total of 310, as predicted by Chief Scott, over 300. The fire department and fire company held their annual installation of officers' dinner on 1/11. The dinner was a joint dinner with Greenbrook Fire Department. Thank you to everyone who attended and to Mayor Salento for performing the oath of office. I'd also like to say, it's not in my report, but I would just like to say how much I think it's so wonderful, the relationship that Greenbrook Fire Department and the Dunellen Fire Department have to support each other and work together. That's really important. Thank you. The Mayor's Cannabis Task Force had our first meeting on January 15th. As we see the dispensaries in our neighboring communities, hearing that delivery is available and municipalities are not receiving the predicted tax monies, we stand by our recommendation for Dunellen to opt out of allowing dispensaries in the borough of Dunellen. We will continue to stay educated on cannabis issues, laws and trends, and how they affect Dunellen. We will also stay aware of other products that are available and may be legalized. Although not cannabis, we feel we should continue to watch these trends. And that's my report tonight.
Yes, buildings and grounds. Borough office relocation. The recreation office is being transformed into a multi-office space that will accommodate the recreation program coordinator, communications coordinator, and the construction office director of community development. Additionally, the borough administrator will move into the OEM office, which is being relocated to the construction office. This consolidation will bring day-to-day office operations under one roof, enhancing collaboration and efficiency. The installation of the new door for the multi-office space and the borough administrator's office, originally scheduled for this week, has been delayed by the manufacturer. The updated installation date is now anticipated for early February. PARSA report. PARSA is continuing its annual program of cleaning and video inspections of the borough sewers mains. Dunellen Public Library. The library offers a wide range of free programs for all ages, from newborns to adults. If you have any suggestions for new programs, feel free to reach out through our Facebook page or website. Our latest edition is the Teen ESL Conversation Session, designed for students in grade 6 and up. This program will take place on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. and registration is recommended. The next Board of Ed meeting is scheduled for January 28th at 7 p.m. At the most recent meeting, Ms. Beatrice Jimenez, the District Community Parent Involvement Specialist, delivered an insightful presentation. She provided an overview of strategies to enhance parent engagement, including how parents can navigate the school system and access available resources. Upcoming dates to remember, February 2nd is early dismissal. February 16th is no school, President's Day. And Greenbrook Flood Commission. The next Greenbrook Flood Commission meeting is scheduled for February 5th. These meetings are held via Zoom unless otherwise specified. If you're interested in learning more about the Greenbrook Subbasin, consider joining the meeting. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Vandermark?
Police report. Last week, the police department, police committee, and borough officials held a round of interviews for the position of probationary officer. The department is still accepting applications, and anyone interested should visit the town website or the department's Facebook page for more information. With the recent snowstorm Sunday, there are quite a few number of cars left in the streets. A reminder, cars must be removed and you will be ticketed if not removed. They will be sent in the mail, so don't think you got away with it. And that is the end of my report.
That's a way to top it off, Councilmember. Councilmember Lance?
Okay, recreation reports are as follows. The Recreation Department and Mayor Salento presented the house decoration contest winner with their plaque on Christmas Eve prior to the Santa Around Town event. The winning house at 340 Dunellen Ave was adorned beautifully with classic evergreen garlands. We thank all those who participated in making Dunellen seasonably bright. Dunellen is especially busy with lots of fun family events during the holidays. On Christmas Eve, Dunellen families came out to greet Santa as he made his way around town, a long-standing tradition. The Recreation Department is always grateful to the Fire Department, Rescue Squad, and Police Department for making this a successful event. A big thank you to Mike Luthman for his dedication to making this event especially special this year and each year. Thank you to all who made this tradition special as always, and you all make this day a very special one in Dunellen. For recreation basketball tipped off on January 4th with close to 100 kids registered in grades K through 6. We have over 15 parent volunteer coaches who help make the season run smoothly, and we're especially thankful to Kate Ruskuski and her excellent leadership this season. Finally, due to the winter weather this past Sunday, the annual senior holiday luncheon at the George W. Hodgelick Firehouse was postponed until this Saturday, January 25th at 1 p.m. Any senior interested in joining can contact the Recreation Department. And as always, the Recreation Department and seniors look forward to the mayor and council's attendance. That's all.
Thank you. Council President Sigmund?
Yes, so adding on to the Santa Around Town, I want to add a special thanks to retired officer Joe Dudley for helping make the DJ trailer available again for allowing me to drive it and encouraging me when I was struggling to reverse the trailer. So thank you. And also, as we begin having our initial committee meetings and re-elect our officers, or elect our officers, I just want to note how encouraged I am by the energy of our many volunteers and by the recent administrative staff addition. And I'm looking forward to it.
Very nice. Thank you. Councilmember Scott?
So for DPW, they continue to routinely clean the downtown and the borough parks and properties. Weekly lawn and landscape maintenance at the parks and properties. They started Christmas tree pickup around town, removed the Christmas decorations around town, put new signs downtown for 15-minute parking and pickup and drop off. Put up 2 new flashing stop signs at Walnut and Newmarket. Those seem to be working.
They're not working?
No, they are working.
Oh,
It's
okay.
fire department hasn't been there. That's what I'm getting at.
Oh, got it.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
January 16th, the crews were in salting the roads. And as we all know, on the 19th, the crews plowed and salted the roads throughout the night. In the mechanic division of Public Works, they service the police fleet as they come up for maintenance or as breakdowns arise. They've serviced the DPW equipment and fleet vehicles as maintenance and breakdowns arise. I replaced the transmission in truck 2 and checked over all the plow equipment and replaced the plow pump on the red pickup during the snowstorm on the 19th. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say a quick shout out to DPW for the great work that they did, curb to curb. I saw somebody who works for another DPW today and they complimented how Dunellen handled it, as they always do. So good work to the team, Alex. So real estate New Jersey feature. So I'm excited to share that the Borough of Dunellen has been featured in the January 2025 edition of Real Estate New Jersey's print and digital magazine. This article covers the history of redevelopment in Dunellen, recently completed projects, approved plans, and more. The features on the homepage of their website, re-nj.com. And I think we're going to put something out tomorrow about it. So keep an eye out for it. I just want to say, in terms of Dunellen Rescue Squad's installation dinner, thank you for the invitation to Mayor and Council for your January 18th installation awards dinners, and extend congratulations to the officers and to the all the organization, and to the chief and deputy chief, et cetera, side, as well as to all the awardees for their hard work. And thank you for your service and volunteering to the community. So round of applause to you guys. Good work. Some stuff from our engineers regarding Klein Place. Corrective work will be completed when weather permits, because they have to work on part of the road that they did corrective work, but we weren't happy about it, so they're going to make it better. But clearly you don't want to deal with asphalt in freezing weather. Lincoln Avenue, final reimbursement figures are under review by the DOT, and our engineer anticipates the borough will ultimately receive the entire grant. The final reimbursement should be around $300,000. Just additional documentation and payments have been made by the borough, and CME is working with CFO Scott Olson on this. So nice to get that money so we can pay down the debt service around that project. And that was a road that was done with 100% grants. So that's great work. Washington Avenue Street Lighting Project. The project's been awarded, and we are coordinating the approval of the award with the NJDOT local aid and the required construction contracts. Second Street Phase 1 project's been awarded, and our engineers coordinating the approval of the award with NJDOT local aid and the required construction contracts. Railroad culvert along South Avenue. So we're coordinating a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers to discuss the status of the Greenbrook project is being scheduled because the railroad culvert wants to understand the BRAT project. The folks around that DP want to understand what's going on with the Army Corps of Engineers project. So we'll see where that goes. 635 Boundbrook Road, future home of the Dunellen Rescue Squad. Demolition bid documents will be submitted to the borough within this month, and we're expecting demolition to hopefully take place in the spring once some bidding goes out. Our engineers will continue to monitor CME, our engineers will continue to monitor the work being performed by Comcast, who's rapidly moving through Dunellen. CME has reviewed flash times for the RRFPs at the intersections of South Madison Avenue, and I don't think that's right.
South Madison. We also are kind of concerned about the timing.
Got it. Okay, I apologize. I'm mixing up the Madison Avenue ones. And I guess that's been reported to you, Alex. And budget letters were submitted for the South Washington Avenue New Market Road pedestrian improvements and the Boundbrook Road streetscape improvements and the borough RRFPB improvements. A meeting was held to discuss the budgetary priorities, and that's why we introduced to amend the ordinance tonight, because then we can start the funding process for both projects and not lose out on the opportunity to grant that's funding one of them. So that's it for me this evening. Department heads, legal, anything?
No report.
Okay. Clerk,
No report.
IT,
No report.
okay. Administration,
Good.
okay. PD, okay. How's it going over parking authority?
Enforce it.
Beautiful. Rescue squad,
Several things. First off, I want to say it is wonderful to do that progress. So thank you very much. In 2024, our squad responded to 314 calls. Our operational man hours were 11,000 with two of our members giving between 1,000 and 2,000 man hours. And two of our members giving over 2,000 hours. That in perspective, that is, two people giving part-time jobs, and one person, and two people giving full-time jobs. Up 40 hours. We also had two CPR saves. Where residents of the town had died and were brought back to life by the rescue squad and delivered that life.
Wow.
Our department currently has a CPR instructor who is holding semi-regular classes, and we also have one instructor who's that we can teach here in the town. These are the resources available.
Thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
I apologize. I jumped over item number 6, council discussion. There are none this evening, but Mrs. Stats sent out the process for mayor and council to have that on the agenda. So thank you. Okay, item number 8 on the agenda is public comments. So anybody who is joining, we'll start this way, whoever's in chambers, then we'll go online and then we'll do a general. Anybody in chambers, we ask that you please state your name and address and then ask your question.
Can I just sit here?
Yeah.
Okay, Candy Rochelle. And I have a couple things, and I wasn't prepared, I came here for the library trustee. Like, for that one. Okay, first thing, about the firehouse. Okay. And if you didn't know that they were there, under the flag, there used to be these bricks, memorial bricks. I don't know how many years ago, was a fundraiser by a brick, had it personalized, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. So since they redid the firehouse, like I was watching, like I saw the bricks there, they were there, and then
They're behind the firehouse now. They're going to be reinstalled.
So is that part of the, like, we doing the property or?
I believe it is. Okay, so, but they're going to be reinstalled. Okay, and that's on the company side, just so you're aware, which is, so there's the department which is controlled by the borough. And then there's the fire company, which is a nonprofit agency that operates within the building that is their fundraising wing and a social side.
Like, if you needed help among the historical society to promote it, to get people involved, like, you would be able to help.
That's very generous. Thank you.
Okay. Another is just a comment, my comment, you don't have to comment, but all these high rises, it's like changing the dynamics of the town. If you've ever driven through Carteret, they have this road and they refer to it as the cavern because it's like, it used to be like townish and now it's just like high-rise apartments. Like, it's like driving east on 28 when you go through Plainfield and you've got the factories there, and that's like, it's like claustrophobic. So it's, I don't know how many more of these are gonna be put up, but it's just changing the tax complexion. Okay, that is, the last thing is about the water. The last email I think that I got from the water company was the end of December, and they send out like these feel-good emails about what they're doing with the water. And then the last one I think I got was the end of December, that there was some kind of meetings for the Raritan River. So I don't know if there's anything since then about the status of the leak or any of the other.
Yeah, unless you can speak to it, my understanding is that they've done their work, they've flushed it out, they've tested it over a couple hundred times and nothing's come back that is poisonous or contaminating to us to drink or make with food. So that's the last notice we received, that everything is basically back to their standard. Well, I think it might be still worth you calling them up. I think, you know.
Okay, question. Talking about the Greenbrook Flood Commission. Who was a 1937 graduate of Dunellen High School who started the Flood Commission?
I have a feeling you know the answer.
Vernon Odell. Okay. And yeah, the Little League field named after him in Greenbrook and a bridge, I think, by T Street in Boundbrook or South Boundbrook.
Well, and this is why you're on the Historical Society, so thank you for your service. So thank you.
Meetings, they're fourth Wednesday of the month at 6:30 and 11.
The Historical Society.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was gonna say, I thought you guys were Thursday for the library.
I just have your address for the record.
412 now, yeah.
Thank you.
So you don't want us to address the comment about the redevelopment of the downtown? You just wanted to make a statement?
I think it's kind of a new point, but just to put it out there, I think.
I understand. I get your perspective. The downtown is in a redevelopment zone. If we don't abide by a redevelopment plan and zoning, you heard it earlier in the evening, there's a thing called builder's remedy. So if a builder comes along and says, I want to build a project that fits within your zoning and your affordable housing requirements, and we say, no, we don't want you to do that. They can then turn around, sue us. We have an activist court, in my opinion, in this state, and they'll say, screw their zoning altogether, build whatever you want. So we surveyed the community 5 years ago, and we try to do an annual survey of some sort. We heard that people don't want anything above, the most response were above 3 and 4 stories. And so as you see, some towns are going 5, 6, 7. I think that completely urbanizes a community. So our redevelopment plan does call for 3 stories, which historically is what our downtown has been. So we're going to try and do this in a balanced approach. I think I am biased. I'm not going to lie to you when I say this. I think we've found a way to do it in a balanced and smart approach where the setback is 16 feet. They're 3 stories. They have some character and charm to the designs. And so that's the goal. And there's some green infrastructure now required to them, so you improve the streetscape. You know, we have to figure out a way to bring back our downtown outside of allowing some vacant buildings to sit around, which is not good for anybody. Revenue, depreciated values.
I also wish that there would be something for senior citizens that if they want to stay in the town, they could, or disabled veterans, or have.
Your mouth to God's ears, and that's exactly our conversations with developers moving forward are to include them. They've always been a part of the conversation. But you can't force a developer's hand, or any builder's hands are going one direction. So you have to work with a builder who kind of comes with the same mindset to do that. So, but we make that request all the time, and it's something that I think we all agree that we would like to see in town, because aging in place is what they call it. That's the technical term, I guess. I agree is important. So you're welcome, Mrs. Harshani. Anybody else from the public? We please ask that you state your name and address.
Jeff Bass, Avenue. I just wanted to comment on something that Councilman said about. We do see a lot of the hair and nail salons that are coming into town. And one of the things I've noticed about them is a large number of them have their windows closed. Does this in any way violate the development sign? It seems like they seem to be, sure, they're businesses that, you know, can actually see are open, even though they've got windows.
Yeah, no, that is a violation of our sign ordinance, and I know Mr. Baudendistel, who specifically handles that for code enforcement. He has cited various businesses in the downtown that have covered their windows. One I can specifically think about is towards Jefferson Avenue. There is a barber shop that had a full display in their window, and I know it's completely gone now. So I will tell them to keep an extra eye out for it.
Okay. Just wondering. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other members of the public in chambers before we go online? Okay, members of the public joining us online, we ask that you please state your name and address. We're here to answer your questions, hear your concerns. I'll make one last general comment, they're both online and in person. Please state your name and address. Okay, without hearing any, we have no further business of the mayor and council, other than item number 9, sorry, adjournment, resolution 81. Can we have a motion and a second, please?
Move it, Sigmund.
Second, Vandermark.
All in favor? Any nays? Okay, everyone, our next meeting is February 3rd, 2020.